Hello and welcome to our Flux podcast series. We recognise that starting university is such a massive and important part of life, and we want to help equip you for starting university, which is why we've developed a podcast and a book at which you can read and think about the ideas of identity, purpose, belonging and fulfilment and what place they have at your university experience. Hello and welcome back to our final episode of Flux. I can't believe we're here, but it's good to be able to chat for one last time and even help equip our fresher students for university. But I thought as we sort of go into this last episode that we could maybe think about the differences of school compared to university. I think starting university brings with it a lot of change, and we really do see those differences when we think back to what our school experience was like and then that paired with our starting university. So what did you guys find the biggest change for was when you started university? I think we mentioned it in an earlier episode, just like not having anyone on you has been a massive change for me. Like I find it hard enough to work in the best of times without much supervision, but that kind of difference of going from school where, like, of course you have your homework and your teachers are checking you every day and your parents are trying to make sure it gets done and all of that, and even just like there's always someone ferrying you to your kind of clubs or societies or anything after school you're doing, to kind of university where no one's looking in on you. Remember that being one of the first things my sister said to me, just like, no one cares if you do your assignments or not. Which is really, it was a kind of tough difference of like, all right, this is all your responsibility now. You have to be accountable to yourself. You have to motivate yourself to get your work done, which is a big change, and something I found kind of tough to deal with for the first kind of little while until I got used to it. But that was a massive change at the start. Absolutely. And school looks so different because you have your structured lessons at one time, and you have your teachers, like you said, Tiwani, really telling you this assignment needs to be done for then, or actually there's an exam coming up so you need to revise for that, and then to go to university where you maybe only have a couple hours of class a week and you've maybe more independent study. That's a massive shift, isn't it? Liz, how did you find this? Was it something similar or?
Yeah, I think similar things. Probably the structure was more difficult for me to get used to. I think I was so used to my routine in school. If I knew when I was in, I knew when I was finished, I knew what I did stuff after school, and all the people, I guess, that I knew. But then coming to university and only having maybe a couple of hours of class a day, being like, what do I do with the rest of the time? And like you said, having to motivate yourself to keep working and to get your assignments done, even though you're only in class for 1 or 2 hours, or maybe not at all some days. And just the change of that, I think it took a while to get used to. And I think I was saying you come from school where your hard work will get you good grades and you do really well, and then you come to university and you're just like really average in your class, maybe just about getting the good grades, and you're like, what's happened? I thought I was smart, and now there's all these people that are just like next level, and you kind of find your place in that as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's so true. When we start university, when you were at school, you've maybe known your whole year group and you've sort of had the same classes with them. You sort of know where you are in your year. But then when you start university, you're surrounded by so many different people, and then actually you could see others that are really high achieving, and that maybe makes us maybe look at ourselves like, oh, where do I fit in amongst this? And it can be stressful, the workload, when we're going to uni and really enjoying our course, but wanting to achieve maybe that first in our degrees, and maybe that's spent, I always remember, for me, the biggest change, having those long nights at the library, doing the all-nighters. Maybe this isn't the best way of saying definitely not, but having those all-nighters at university and finding it really tough, I think, trying to keep on top of learning the right things for the exam and really pushing myself and putting pressure on myself to get that first in the degree. And I suppose university is such an incredible time, filled with such joy and relationships, and studying something that you hopefully love as well. But it can also be really stressful. We're even talking about the exams and different learning styles. But I suppose, how did you guys find, did you resonate with this, the stress at university? Did you have times where you maybe found it harder or more stressful?
Yeah, I think my mind automatically goes to my second year at university. So, because I studied German, I had to go to Germany to do a placement year in my third year. And so that was something that I always knew going into the course. I was looking forward to it. I mean, it's part of the reason why I did the course. I didn't want to go away for my whole course, but I knew I would get this opportunity to go and do my placement year. But then coming into second year, we had to find our own placement. So it had to be in a business in Germany, because I was doing business with Germans. So we had to get both those experiences. But the university didn't really have contacts in Germany. They had some in France and Spain, but German was quite a new and small course, so they didn't really have the same contacts. And so it was, I had to spend the year like applying, doing applications, doing Zoom or video interviews in German. It was like all very stressful. And people were then starting to get their placements at different times of the year, and maybe you were one of the only ones that didn't have anything sorted. It was just a really stressful time in the midst of then trying to do like your normal uni degree and still get the good grades, because you needed to be able to get those to get your placement. And I guess the stress that if you didn't get a placement, you couldn't continue in the course. There wasn't an option to skip over it. So I actually ended up only getting my placement in July, and I had to move out in September. So it was a long year of trying to apply for those, and just the uncertainty of like knowing I had to go away, but I didn't know where it was going to be to, or when, or where I was going to be, or what I was going to be doing. So definitely a stressful year.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think I had a slightly similar one in second year, without going into too many boring details. Of course, I was doing a sports coaching degree, a football coaching degree, and we have kind of football coaching licenses, and you could do each of them kind of in your different years of the degree. And the kind of highest one you could do in the college was also the third highest one in Europe, and has a lot of benefits attached to it, and like kind of you're able to move around with it. So, and as well, it was free because you were doing it in the degree as well. So like it was the sort of thing that like not everyone could do, only like the kind of best 20 in the kind of year could go into. So I remember in second year as well, we had that kind of time where we were effectively doing kind of you had to put on a 20-minute session, and effectively it decided whether you'd get onto that next license or not. And that was a really stressful time, I remember, because of course it was either free through the college, or you could do it again outside of the college, like in your own time, but you'd have to pay for it. So you'd have to kind of raise the money first and all, and save money for it. And it was a bit of a stressful time, kind of trying to get it done, And I remember even the time as well, like some of the other lads in the course were just like, rehearsing all of their lines, like everything they're going to say on the pitch, and like finding it quite stressful. And as well, you were just trying to be like, the odds were just so, well, not against you, but just it was kind of hard to achieve. So it was a bit of a stressful time also, because you're looking towards your future as well. You're not just looking towards like finishing your course well. So it didn't work out, unfortunately, but has worked out afterwards, I suppose. Yeah.
Oh, and that's a lot of pressure as well, Tiwani. Like even when you think about that one session you have to really do well in. And I suppose like where did you go and Livs as well, like where did you both go for comfort in amidst all of this stress and uncertainty?
I pretty much went to the lab, to the bed. I didn't deal with it too well, I don't think, because as well we were doing like the rest of our college degree as well, like we were doing our classes and our different assignments at the end of the year, so it was a bit of a stressful time. And kind of any moment I wasn't working, I was pretty much just in bed. I wasn't really keeping up with the rest of my life too well. I wasn't doing much outside of kind of studying, coaching, and sleeping, or like just kind of lazing away, watching Netflix, or I don't know, playing on my phone or something, going on social media. So I kind of just sought refuge in kind of the four walls of my bedroom, and that was probably wrongly where I looked. Yeah.
I think I tried to probably keep up with it all by just like keeping doing stuff, and probably trying to like mask the stress or just kind of not really pay attention to it and be like, oh, it'll work out. And so I did like stay involved in a lot of stuff, and definitely a lot of stuff that brought me a lot of joy, and especially I remember just being involved in the international student ministry in Belfast, and stuff like that was really helpful of still being involved in that stuff. But I think kind of coming towards the end of that year, I realised that I'd used that just to kind of actually just go away from the problem, how I was actually feeling about it. And I sort of realised that it had led to me feeling quite unwell a lot of the time during the year, and just the stress, allowing the stress that to build up within me, and not really, I guess, going to people about that, and looking for people to help me, and in that stress.
Yeah, and that could be our, I suppose, natural reactions to when we're feeling this stress, maybe. Like it is that, you know, going like napping and like spending that time maybe like disconnecting or not thinking about it, you know, like pushing on. And I think no matter where we go in life, whether that is at uni, and there will be those ups and downs at uni, but in all of life, we'll face those times of joy, but also hardship. And we've been talking about Philippians in our last couple of podcasts, and even in the Flux resource material. It talks about this beautiful letter that Paul is writing to the Philippians church. And he has this wonderful perspective on hardship and rejoicing in light of that. Paul writing this letter actually from a prison in Rome at the time. We even think about Paul's hardship and persecution. But yet he has a really wonderful perspective on satisfaction and rejoicing. So what does this look like for Paul? What does true satisfaction and rejoicing look like for him?
I think you can see in these verses here that he's just really grasped what it means to be a follower of Christ, and what it means to live in the security of that. I mean, he's gone so far as to live out his faith in a way that he's willing to give his life up and be in prison for Christ. But he's done that all with the like end goal, I guess, in sight. Like he knows that it is, you know, where he will be, and what the end of his story is when he says like to die is gain. He knows that he'll be with Christ, and in that then you see that, you know, he doesn't care here in Philippians 1, in those first few verses we see in the Flux studies, in a kind of like verse 15, that people were preaching the gospel out of maybe selfish ambition, but he's saying, you know, it doesn't matter as long as the gospel is preached, and he rejoices in the fact that Christ is being preached. And I think when you see that, you just see his perspective that is just so different than what we're used to, that he sees that he can rejoice because this gospel is going forward. And I think it really helped me, the passage or the article that's there in Flux, where it talks about, you know, when we see a recipe and if we see the end goal, we're able to kind of work towards that end goal, and to hopefully get that perfect thing made at the end. May not always work out, but I guess it's different as Christians. Like we know that end goal, we know that the end is to be with Christ, and as Christians we can rest and rejoice in that. And so that helps us as we go through each step, and as we go through these uncertainties and stresses, we can know that is not what is eternal. What is eternal is that one day we will be with Christ. And I think reflecting back just to that episode where we talked about peace, we're really able then to experience that peace and joy that it is of knowing Christ in this life, and of knowing that he goes with us in this life, and in those uncertainties and stresses, but also that there is an ultimate fulfillment, is called in this, at the end of it, and that is that one day we get to be with Christ.
And what a beautiful hope that is. And verses that we may know well, that Paul says to live is Christ and to die is gain. And that just is, when we think about them, maybe we've heard them before over and over, but that is incredible when we think about it, that actually we can fully rest in what Jesus has done for us, and that living for him is worth it. It's everything. And dying for him is gain. And what a beautiful hope that is, and even what you're sharing, Liz. And I suppose, how does that encourage us in how we view suffering and happiness at university? What impact does this have on our experience at university?
Yeah, it's very clear for Paul that like he's so Christ-centered in everything he does and everything he sees. Like everything he kind of goes through, he's so happy to do because of Christ. All he sees is the the glory of Jesus in everything he does. And I think that's like really key for us. Like, you know, of course it's really powerful verses. Like, to live is great because I get to see the gospel go out to people, whether even if it's from some of his rivals, he's happy for that. But to die is gain as well, because he gets to spend eternity with Jesus. There's no lose in that situation. And I think that's something really key for us that we can hold on to in everything that we do, that like when we see it as, you know, when you see Christ at the center of it, it makes it so much more bearable. It makes it so much more worth it as well. When we kind of go out and we go to our clubs, our societies, our classes, everything we do in university, with Christ at the center of it. And of course, I think we saw in one of the previous episodes, in one of the previous Philippians studies, how Paul encourages us to think of everything that is noble, everything that's true, admirable, lovely. All of those things are true of Christ. And all of those things are certainly good, that we can 100% take heart in, be encouraged in, and enjoy, because all of those things are who Christ is and more, infinitely so. So yeah, gives us big encouragement.
Yeah, and I think even when Paul talks here about the fruitfulness as well, and he says, like, if I'm to go on living, this will mean fruitful labour. And you think, like, how can he be thinking of fruit when he's in prison? Like, surely, like, you know, you don't, that can't be fruitful. Is that a fruitful life? But really it is. It's like he knows that to live is to tell others about Christ. And so the all he's going through is worth it. And I guess I'm just thinking here, even if, you know, if I knew what the end goal or what the outcome of my time in Germany would be at the start, you know, how would I have approached it differently? And I think that's what we have here. Like, he does know the end goal, so he is approaching life differently. You know, I went away and I honestly, I can see how God used that time to shape me and to be fruitful. But at the time, it maybe didn't feel that this was fruitful. But even just the perspective that you gain and the opportunities you have to share him with people that, you know, I wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think, Paul just really challenges us here that, like, you know, well, you do know the end goal, so your life here is fruitful because you have a message of hope to share with people, which is so different.
And I think that's such a contrast to our modern attitude of happiness and suffering. And like, how do you think it is a contrast? Like, when we look at it, like, I think when we read this, it's easy to let us wash over it, but what he's saying is so different than maybe just how our lived experience is. What do you guys think? Do you resonate with that? Or?
Yeah, I think there's this attitude of, like, if something doesn't make you happy, then don't do it. Or, you know, if you don't enjoy your job, just quit. If you don't, you know, all of these things of, like, why would we waste our time with things that are going to make us feel down? Or but that's really not the attitude we have, I guess, if we're Christians, and if we're really seeking God's guidance in our lives. Well, we have to believe then that God has placed us in these places for a reason. And so even if there is suffering with that, even if there are times that are stressful, I mean, maybe it is that sometimes that is you know, God encouraging us to go and do something else. Maybe it is, but maybe it is that God has put us there to learn and to grow and to even to tell about others, tell to him, to others around us where he has placed us, and to use those things, and for people to see. Even, I mean, I guess it's a challenge even to say to people, you know, I mightn't be loving it, or I mightn't be what is making me happy right now, but it's where I believe that God has placed me, and even the witness that can be to people, of that just that trust in Christ and that security that we have in Christ despite maybe our circumstances.
Yeah, it's worthwhile. It's completely, it shouldn't surprise us when we look at the Bible and it says, you know, kind of, Paul sees suffering as fruitful because the Bible's countercultural, you know, like quite a lot of it is countercultural, and quite a lot of the gospel is countercultural as well. And that idea of seeing suffering as worthwhile is so illuminating of what the gospel is, you know. And I think it's something that, of course, we can take a lot of heart in. Like, there's never, when it's for Christ, there's never a worthless, pointless kind of suffering there. It's always for, as you say, it's always for the good of yourself as a believer, the good of the church, or the good of the Christian community, and ultimately is glorifying to God when it's for Christ, for his sake, that you are, filling up in afflictions, I suppose. Yeah,
which is so different again than our modern view of just wanting to be happy, just wanting to be comfortable as well. And I think even that you, like, both are saying that will others will catch a wind of that and see actually that is something that's different, you know, and really hopefully see Jesus through that, and the Lord will use that as well in mission. And I suppose like what we're thinking about what this looks like at uni when we're maybe going through these hardships or having that stressful time, where can we point to, or where can we go to as students that will really help us be reminded of this great truth?
I think a life without, it's cliche, but you always have to go back to the gospel. You always have to go back to the Bible. You have to be reminded of the simple basic truths that Jesus died for you, and Jesus guides you. And at the end, as we saw with the raspberries, the end is good and the end is worthwhile. So I think we always have to return to the gospel and the good news of Jesus, and we have to remind ourselves of that, but be around people who also remind us of that as we go through things.
Absolutely, Tiwani.
And it's going back to that bigger picture, I think. Like we talked about last time, even if that is within the church, and just seeing the bigger picture of who we are as a body of Christ, but also just that bigger picture of, well, the end goal is that one day we will be with Christ. And so I think there's something that it said here, and like imagine looking around in your classes and those people that you see are with you in that picture of that end goal of where we read in Revelation that people from every tribe and tongue and nation will be there to worship God, and we will see him and be together in that and united in that. And I think for me, like what helps in those times, if not having that attitude of like, well, I just have to make myself happy, it's no, well, actually I'm part of a bigger story and a bigger goal. And so how can I use this to bring others with me in that, and to share that hope that we have, so that one day they can be with us in that, and sharing that hope and that purpose that we have. But I guess in that as well, it's a challenge that we have to live our lives as an example to others in that. And I guess Paul even encourages us here, whatever happens, conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. It is just a real challenge to us. And like Tiwani said, to know how to do that, we have to keep coming back to Christ, keep coming back to the Bible, and keep being rooted in relationships with people that will point us back to that.
Yeah, and that's been the theme of all of these podcasts, hasn't it? That we actually look to Jesus, who has given himself more and above for us. And our prayer for you guys listening is that actually you will know this, that you will know who you are in Jesus, the richness of his gospel and who he is, and that will allow you to have confidence in what it looks like whatever it looks like for you at university. And I suppose as we close our series, it's been such a joy, and thank you guys so much for engaging with all of these many podcasts. I think we just want to leave you with Paul's prayer to the Philippian church in Philippians 1 verse 9. And this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth and insight, and so that you may be able to discern what is best, and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you so much for engaging with our Flux podcast series. We'd love for you to read along with us in our Flux resource, which you can get for free, what a bargain, at coi.ie/linkup.